Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're literally opening the file on America's oldest historical cold case. For over 400 years, the Lost Colony of Roanoke has absolutely captivated historians, right? Well, today, we're going to strip away the centuries of myth, look at the actual physical clues, and see what modern science has to say about the fate of these early settlers. Let's get right into it.
Picture the scene. It's August 1590. An English supply ship finally drops anchor off the coast of present-day North Carolina. The expedition's leader, John White, rows ashore. He's expecting to greet his family and the 100-plus settlers he left behind 3 years ago. But instead, he walks into a total ghost town. The settlement was completely deserted. The houses had been carefully dismantled, not destroyed, mind you, just taken apart. There were no bodies and absolutely zero signs of a struggle.
It's the ultimate locked room mystery, but on a continental scale. I mean, how do 115 men, women, and children just vanish without a trace into the North American wilderness? To figure this out, we're going to turn you into a co-investigator. We're looking at the motives, the timeline, the physical clues left at the scene, and the modern forensic evidence that's finally cracking this 400-year-old enigma.
Section 1. The Ill-Fated Expeditions. Okay, so establishing an English foothold in the New World was brutal work, and the Crown took two very different approaches here. The first attempt, back in 1585, was mostly soldiers. They antagonized local indigenous communities and eventually just hitched a ride back to England. But the 1587 expedition, the one that vanished, was an entirely different story. These were farming families aiming for a self-sustaining community. They even had pregnant women on board. In fact, this led to the birth of Virginia Dare, the first English child born in North America. So these weren't hardened soldiers, They were highly vulnerable families.
And man, that vulnerability was instantly compounded by just terrible timing. So they arrive in 1587 and almost immediately realize they're going to need more supplies. So John White sails back to England. But in 1588, the massive Spanish Armada attacks. Queen Elizabeth requisitions literally every available ship, trapping White in Europe. For 3 agonizing years, these stranded families are completely cut off from any English support, just left entirely to their own devices in a totally unfamiliar environment.
Section 2. Cryptic Clues Left Behind.
So, when White finally makes it back in 1590, he essentially steps onto a crime scene. He takes careful stock of what remains. First off, the dismantled houses. That points to a planned, organized departure, right? Not a sudden panic. Second, no mass graves. But the most famous clues, for sure, were the carvings. He found the letters C-R-O on a tree, and the full word Croatoan carved right into a wooden palisade that surrounded the settlement.
Now, those carvings alone are super fascinating, but the most important clue is actually, well, what was missing. Before White left in 1587, he and the colonists agreed on a secret code. If they had to relocate under distress or attack, they were supposed to carve a Maltese cross next to their destination. So the absolute crucial point here is there was no cross found anywhere. The complete absence of this distress signal strongly suggests that whatever prompted the colonists to pack up their homes and leave, they didn't think they were in immediate mortal danger when they did it.
Right, so where did they go? They packed up intentionally, they left a forwarding address, and they weren't under attack. Where to? Well, Croatoan was the name of a nearby island, which is modern-day Hatteras Island, and it was home to a friendly indigenous community. White wanted to sail there immediately to find them, but a massive storm hit, his ship's cables snapped, and dwindling supplies literally forced the crew to abandon the search and go back to England. Just like that, the trail went completely cold.
Section 3. Examining the leading theories.
Because the historical record literally sailed away with John White, human imagination just rushed right in to fill the void, but we can easily eliminate the sensationalized pop culture myths. Supernatural forces, alien abductions, zero credible evidence there, obviously. What about a wholesale massacre by hostile tribes? Also highly unlikely, given the total lack of burned structures, weapons, or graves. That leaves us with the two most credible, evidence-based theories: an inland move or integration with the Croatoan people.
Section 4. Tree rings and hidden maps.
To figure out where they went, modern science actually has to tell us what forced their hand in the first place. I want you to remember this stark number: 800. Climatologists and tree ring analysts have studied ancient bald cypress trees in the region to reconstruct the exact climate of the late 16th century. And what those tree rings reveal is wild. Between 1587 and 1589, the exact years the colonists were stranded,
The region experienced the most severe drought it had seen in 800 years. This devastating environmental pressure limited their fresh water and completely destroyed their crop yields. So they didn't leave because of a curse, they left because Roanoke Island had literally become biologically unsurvivable.
Driven by starvation, they simply had to move. Today, archaeologists aren't out there looking for, cinematic Indiana Jones-style treasure chests to track them down. Instead, they use sophisticated tools like ground-penetrating radar, GIS mapping, and radiocarbon dating. They're basically tracking microscopic clues, hunting for tiny fragments of pottery and food remains in spots where European and indigenous cultures began to overlap.
Section 5. Adaptation over disappearance. And those microscopic clues have led modern historians to a really compelling verdict. This is fundamentally a story of incredible human adaptation. The strongest evidence points directly to their forwarding address. Excavations on modern-day Hatteras Island, then known as Croatoan, have uncovered 16th-century European pottery and metal tools totally mixed into indigenous sites. Facing a historic drought, the colonists clearly made a calculated decision to integrate with Chief Mantio's friendly community, relying on vital indigenous knowledge just to survive. This totally changes how we view early American history. For way too long, colonial narratives basically treated Native Americans as mere background figures. But the modern historical consensus is crystal clear. Survival in the New World demanded profound cooperation. The Croatoan people weren't just bystanders here. Their agricultural knowledge was the literal lifeline that saved the Roanoke settlers from being erased by that 800-year drought.
The carved word, Croatoan, wasn't a cryptic riddle at all. It was a clear, calm message left by a people adapting to survive. So I want to leave you with this thought as we close out today's explainer. What if the greatest mystery isn't whether they vanished into thin air, but rather how they resiliently rebuilt their lives, forged new families, and created a totally new blended culture completely beyond the reach of English record books? The Lost Colony might not be lost at all. They might just be hidden in the very fabric of early American history. Keep questioning what you know, and we'll see you on the next explainer.